PoE 2, though, it seems like they've been working pretty hard on this. Here we go.
Path of Exile 1 is a game I treasure deeply, and I shall continue to treasure it as long as it's actively receiving expansions and the servers are online. However, I, like countless other Path of Exile and general ARPG players, desire a new era of games, and in particular, a new era of Path of Exile. Will Path of Exile 2 sweep in and save us? Will Path of Exile 2 actually evolve the ARPG genre? Oh, you're
I feel like they obviously are going to evolve ARPGs. It's not even a question, right? Like, yeah.
From what and how exactly? Well, even though I thoroughly enjoy Path of Exile 1 and loved nabbing 40 out of 40 challenges and 3.24 Necropolis League, here are several examples of gameplay I do not enjoy and hope Path of Exile saves us from, while steering the ARPG genre in an entirely new, exciting direction.
Man. Oh. Wow, that's a lot of stuff. Is that good? Yeah, it's good. The ones that have the white name are good. Visual clutter has been a problem in PoE for a long time.
ARPG gameplay right now, right there.
Yeah.
Okay, let's return to some chill Path of Exile 2 gameplay footage. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think people shouldn't be able to go and do this in Path of Exile 1. It's there, it's in the game, and quite possible. Go for it, but I'm looking for a different vibe in Path of Exile 2.
I understand what he's saying. He's talking about the massive visual clutter and the overload of the game. But here's another thing to keep in mind, is that if you watch the trailer for Necropolis, it's also not showing gameplay that like you're seeing in PoE 1. So I don't really know if we can rely on PoE 2 to not have that as much, because if you look at the Necropolis trailer or any of the trailers for the games, they never show gameplay like that, and they never show like the overload of it. They only show it in like very, very small segments. So PoE 2 could indeed be more like that at the end game if you're playing very seriously.
Plenty of other players who deeply like this type of gameplay consistently, and fret not. Path of Exile 1 shall stay this way, and if the last two leagues are any indication, lean on it hard in the future. However, Path of Exile 2's vibe won't match this, at least not at the outset. Additionally, I'd argue they'll attempt to steer slightly toward this and in an entirely new direction for PoE 2. And no, that PoE 2 vibe...
I think that they should, because like if you are happy with the way that PoE 1 is, well, then they've already got you with PoE 1. Like, it's only logical that they would try to make a new type of game because it's bringing in a new audience. Yeah, it's common sense. PoE 2 update was supposed to solve clutter, and now it's its very own game. Yeah, the clutter in PoE 1 is just, like, insane. I don't think that you should need to download an item filter.
I'm yearning for is not No Rest for the Wicked, wherein every attack is massively weighty and scaling is... well, not into godhood as it is in PoE 1, and will be at a slower rate in PoE 2. No Rest for the Wicked, in my expertly personal opinion, is not the type of isometric ARPG evolution Path of Exile 2 is or should go for. Which begs the question, what kind of vibe, what kind of evolution is it going for?
I think No Rest for the Wicked is actually a pretty good foundation to base things off of. But obviously, there are a lot of things that No Rest for the Wicked is built around, like, for example, a stamina system, a poise system, and also iframing, which is, like, really, like, these are Dark Souls mechanics, fundamentally. ARPGs aren't the same as that, but they do have overlap.
And how will it achieve that state of change? Well, Talamoana, my fellow exiles, let's discuss.
Okay.
The vibe of Path of Exile 2 is clear as the Lake of Kalandra, but hopefully not as poorly received. The atmosphere is dark and gritty, with a constant cycle of deadly tension and drastic dopamine releases. The focus on extreme customizability is high, with a clear line for a new player to go from novice to veteran in the game itself. These two ideas coalesce to form a clear vibe for PoE 2. It seeks to be what Path of Exile 1 yearned to be, an excellent isometric ARPG with killer combat and endless customization. But while the vibe is simple, the path to achieving it requires a complex evolution, one that may upset many PoE 1 players and bring an entirely new audience to Path of Exile
what's going to upset
I've
them?
broken down this evolution into 4 distinct categories. Visibility, enhanced customization, true action combat, and content overload.
As somebody who plays PoE 1, I already agree with everything in this video. I haven't seen it yet, but I completely agree. True. Yep.
One category might bleed into another, but each are unique and seem to be focal points of how Path of Exile 2 is pushing the envelope and crafting the next era of ARPGs. First up, let's talk visibility. This is a titanic issue in numerous ARPGs, not just Path of Exile 1.
Yeah, Diablo 4 has this as well. It's very hard for you to see what's happening in the game, and this is the problem, is that I think that as ARPGs evolve, people like seeing higher density and more mob farming. But the problem is that whenever that's happening, you also, like, whenever you have 7 elites on the screen, it's hard to see what every elite is doing. So, like, PoE 2, I hope that they don't go overboard with mob density. Because I feel like that's what games end up trying to do, like PoE did, and also Diablo 4 is doing, and Diablo 3 also did, is they just add in more and more and more mobs to where you realistically can't, like, you're no longer making, like, intelligent minute-to-minute, like, second-to-second gameplay decisions, because there are so many mobs that the only way to effectively deal with them is to kill them before they do anything, or to have so much health that anything that they do won't kill you. That's the problem. PoE 1 should keep it, and PoE 2 should stay away from it? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. Turns into a bullet hell? Yeah, you can't track the moves. Yeah, it's like you're trying to keep up with 5 different attacks from 10 different mobs. You can't do it.
Yes, I do think at the top end, PoE 1 exhibits the worst qualities of clutter. There's simply too much of it. But other games like Diablo 4 also showcase lack of visual clarity in other ways I'm not too in love with.
Yeah, look at that. Like, what the fuck is going on here? It's very hard to actually see what's happening on the screen.
However, PoE 2 seeks to address this in 2 clear ways. First, player scaling will be kept in control, while player power will still be able to be ridiculous. A great example is instead of shooting 1,000 projectiles per second, you can shoot 50 and accomplish the same thing. It just doesn't destroy the screen. This goes for player abilities, monster density.
Yeah, I think this is also good probably, like, for their servers. Because I remember, like, Mathel had this one build, one league, where, like, he was creating, it was, like, before they capped, like, the amount of volatile dead that you could make. And he would just create so many of them on Legion events that it would basically crash the game, and whenever he would come back, everything would be dead.
More. This will drastically assist visual clarity while running around blasting packs and fighting bosses, which is a huge win.
Like, one of the biggest and, like, worst ones is I remember I was playing Ward Loop, and I realized that, like, I'm actually never going to level. Because I'm never going to be able, like, unless I can kill everything in one hit in 1 fraction of a second, the mobs will kill me because I can never actually see what's happening.
Another note on bosses, Diablo 4 and clarity. In PoE 2, damage numbers shall exist, but they will not be as invasive as Diablo 4. Instead, they'll appear next to a boss's health bar like an Elden Ring. This is a feature quite a few players seem to be excited about.
Yeah, I'm a very big fan of numbers. I like it in Lost Ark, I like it in Diablo 4, I liked it in Diablo 3, I liked it in WoW. Like, I like being able to see how much damage I'm doing. Because, like, the reason why it's really important for a game like PoE also is because if you can't figure that out, it becomes infinitely harder for you to A/B test different things. It's really hard for you to figure out, oh, did I crit? Was this not a crit? Like, did the debuff, was the debuff applied at the second that this mob was hit there, right? Was it a glancing blow or something like that? You don't want people to have to download Path of Building. And I think numbers prevent that from happening.
Path of Exile's other historic
Make it harder for it to
problem
happen.
is a loot. It's ridiculous, and in some cases, it's enough to completely deteriorate your experience.
And as somebody who played PoE ever since the closed beta, loot was always not like this in PoE. Loot has just gotten more and more, because things like a lot of the things that you just saw in that clip, like a lot of those items weren't really available that much at the beginning of PoE. It's just something that's evolved over time.
PoE2, they're cutting down on the trash loot, so less will drop, but what does drop shall be more valuable. They're accomplishing this in multiple ways, such as giving value to various item base types and rarities, as well as grouping unidentified items into tiers. On top of this, more value is being placed on merchants and gold. Some of your upgrades are going to move from dropping off monsters or being bought from players to being traded with vendors in town. This is all great stuff, and I cannot wait to see it in action all.
Yeah, this is something that like experienced PoE players know about with like vendor recipes, but most average players don't, because it's not really explained anywhere. It's like, how are you supposed to know, like, oh, if you want to D-rank your gem, you have to trade it to the vendor with like a scouring orb or a orb of regret. Like, how are you really going to know that?
Together. Next, let's delve into enhanced customization. Path of Exile 1 already upped the ante from previous titles in the genre with its massive passive skill tree.
That's what the game's all about.
System,
that's the best thing about the game.
Ascendancies, and all the features stemming from those core 4 concepts. Path of Exile 2 expands this readily. First, the confirmed upgrades. We know the skill gem system is moving from being socketed into gear and now into your character, making experimentation with new skills easier, allowing you
This is another thing, is that I think that I would enjoy PoE more if I had more opportunity to take risks and try different things. But because PoE has so many punishments for swapping things around, like with regret orbs or having to, like unlearn ascendancy talents, etc. And again, like, this isn't something I want to see changed in PoE 1, but I do think that it's a hindrance to the game overall. In the same way that, like, for example, in Season of Discovery, now that we have dual spec, I play the game. I would play the game more. I'm not playing it right now at all. But like, whenever I did, I would play the game more because I could just swap to arms. I could just swap the Fury. It's not a big deal.
To easily equip new items you find, and additionally, and outside of this tight scope, tons of new skills can be added easily with their new animation and special effects rigging and pipeline. Second, we'll be able to configure multiple passive skill trees that swap depending on the weapon we're using. This allows us to house multiple playstyles on a single character, say a one-handed sword with a shield on one loadout and a two-handed crossbow on another.
This is an opinion. I don't really know how I feel about this. But like, World of Warcraft has this with its new skill trees, and I'm curious, how would you guys feel if PoE did something like they had a like entry level or like beginner level like talent tree just for people to like get the hang of the game and understand it? It's like voted on by the community or like made for like beginner players. Yeah, that'd be starter builds in Dragonflight. Yeah, Dragonflight has like starter builds. Like, I wonder if that would be good for the game. Recommended talents? Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Because, like, again, I view any time that a player feels like they have to, and this is an important word, have to, go off of the game and look something up, I view that as a fuck up. That's like that's a shortcoming. Oh, the game shouldn't have let that happen, right? That's my viewpoint.
When we swap from one weapon set to the other, our tree
you should never have to tab out or look things up
dynamically. Additionally, we can
things
even
should make sense intuitively.
Or skills attached to
Elden
a
Ring,
weapon set
great example.
to automatically swap to the proper passive skill tree. Third, we're getting a total of 12 character classes and 36 ascendancy classes.
That's a lot.
That's a bunch of further unique customization, and it's something we've not even seen a glimpse of yet. The passive skill tree is also being reworked to allow for it to help characters specialize into certain things, instead of having nodes everyone must always take, like life nodes.
Yeah.
That'll further cement PoE 2's evolution.
Yeah, like the little square.
Potentially bringing it above PoE 1, despite all the features it has housed within it presently. Third, let's define true action combat. We all know Path of Exile 1 doesn't have the
And this is a problem that PoE 1 has, is that most combat in the game is like very minimal. And you do have like a few boss fights that do have really cool combat sequences. But the majority of the game is building around how to just completely avoid those sequences. And a lot of times the sequences are also like these instant pass fails. Like serious die beams, or getting hit by a boulder on Searing Exarch, or fucking up the Maven thing. Like, you're just instantly dead. So in my opinion, I think it's like better designed to have like more mechanics that don't instantly kill you. I don't really like learning instant kill mechanics, because it's really hard to like test and be like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to do this now because of this new mechanic. It's like, oh, okay, I'm going to avoid that. It's hard to learn because you just instantly keep getting reset. They're adding dodge rolls? Yeah.
Strategic combat most of the time, and even well before you reach godlike status, you can turn your brain off while playing. In Path of Exile 2, it's going to take longer to get to that state because combat is going to be impactful, meaningful, and in many cases, I'm sure, difficult. Especially in the campaign, most pack fights will mean something. You'll need to react to the abilities of monsters and what they're doing. You'll likely use multiple skills depending on the situation, and then you'll
and that's another issue that PoE 1 has, is that most builds are built around, and this is the way that a lot of ARPGs are, or by a lot of, I mean really just this and Diablo 4, is that they're usually built around using one skill and having it do all the damage. Which is like, it's the most effective way of building a character, but it's also the most boring way of building a character.
You'll need to use the brand new active dodge ability to outsmart these incredibly detailed bosses. One of the reasons PoE 2 came to be was to fix melee and make it feel better in PoE 1. It transformed into an entirely new game, wherein every single class should truly feel excellent to maneuver through the battlefield. Now, let's dive into content overload. Path of Exile 2 will not release in the state the following games launched in. Diablo 2, Path of Exile 1, Diablo 3, Torchlight Infinite, Diablo 4, Last Epoch, and No Rest for the Wicked. Explicitly, grinding your games.
Which, by the way, I do think No Rest for the Wicked right now has the best isometric combat. And I don't even think it's close. It's really, really good.
Stated Path of Exile 2, even in early access, will boast a wealth of content, a brand new campaign, an expansive endgame, and more than enough room to experiment with over 700 unique items, more than 100 bosses, and dozens of other beloved systems. These developers understand the campaign quality must be high for new players entering PoE 2 or the genre as a whole, but they also understand what comes after the campaign must be of the same quality, if not higher. No other ARPG has done this before. Path of Exile 2 will be the first. They're setting their bar high and seek to deliver an absolute mammoth amount of content even upon the release of early access later this year. Oh,
that's one thing that's like really big for me, is that like any game, I always get really impressed by games that the game really starts whenever you beat the game. Like Monster Hunter is like this, where it's like if you really want to do the hard shit, the real shit, well, beat the campaign and then you get to play the game. Like Grand Blue Fantasy Relink was kind of the same thing.
And
Dragon's Dogma 2 kind of was like that too.
Sounds and plays beautifully.
To a lesser extent.
If this all works out, it'll be a spectacular evolution. And I'm pretty confident grinding your games shall succeed. Grinding Gear Games isn't a new dev on the block. They've been around a while, and while Path of Exile 2 currently has no release date, there are exactly 3 reasons why I'm confident it'll be an evolution of the ARPG genre. First, the developers are intentionally making delays and pushing back against both large swaths of the community and their publisher, Tencent. They are cognizant of the fact that Path of Exile 2 needs to be ready before it is released. It cannot be undercooked. There's no
This is a big thing that I think that a lot of developers are starting to realize, is that if you release a game and it's bad, it's a bad game. That's it. People have already decided bad game. And people don't like to change their opinion either. Like, think about like Diablo 4. Diablo 4 right now is in a pretty good state, my opinion, right? Some people might disagree, but I think it's in a pretty good state. And a lot of the people that are playing it agree with me. But here's the issue, is that D4 bad. Remember? You guys remember D4 bad? Yeah, right? Okay, so how could D4 be in a good state if D4 bad? It's impossible.
Are happy with the fact that Path of Exile 2's early access, which was supposed to start in about 2 weeks on June 7th, 2024, is now delayed until the end of the year. As Jonathan Rogers has said about PoE 2's development, with every few months that pass by, they're leaving money on the table with both slower PoE 1 development and having PoE 2 staying behind the scenes longer and longer.
I haven't seen that boss fight. That's fucking badass. Look at this.
And having PoE 2 staying behind the scenes longer and longer. They are keen on getting this game released in a proper state, with every ounce of evolution we've outlined in this video, and that's a good thing.
Well, it's also like, I mean, PoE has brought in undercooked leagues, right? Like, I mean, he made the example of Kalandra. Like, whenever Lake of Kalandra came out, people hated it. People seem to not like the new Necropolis League, too. I'm not really sure why. I didn't really play the league, so I don't know the nuances to it. But I know that, like, that's happened before. So, like, if the game is problematic, the players will go absolutely fucking ballistic. And they know that.
Second, Grinding Gear Games has a proven track record, and they are a company we can trust. No matter your opinion on Path of Exile 1, they've been running the game for over a decade now and have built upon its foundation over and over, evolving the ARPG genre with patch after patch. The game began as a bare-bones spiritual sequel to Diablo 2, which was a game beloved by at least one of Grinding Gear Games' founders, Chris Wilson, and turned it into a titan of the gaming industry, helping propel up a small indie company into a true...
You know, I actually used to play that build. The Frost Nova Inquisitor, and then the Frost Shock one where you would farm, like, the Wasteland.
Force to be reckoned with. Here's Path of Exile 1 in 2010. Here's Path of Exile 1 in 2015. Here's Path of Exile 1 in 2020. And here's Path of Exile 1 now. The game has evolved over time thanks to the very same people working on PoE 2. Seriously, PoE 2 is almost guaranteed to be the evolution many of us are searching for. Third,
and you can see, like, visually, PoE 2 has already been released, right? Like, I would say that that boss, I forgot the boss's name, the one that calls down all the stars, like Searing Exarch, these bosses, like, visually, these are incredibly well-designed bosses. These look amazing.
Exile 2 has a clear vision, with minor touch-ups being done by others and input from the greater PoE and ARPG community. However, and this is key, the game is being designed with a very pointed purpose in mind by someone who is clearly envisioning what they think is the best action role-playing game that can currently be made. Yes, I am merely summarizing the role of game director, the role of Mr. Jonathan Rogers. But it's a role that is lacking in many games that have AAA budgets and quality as of late. I don't want to rag on Diablo 4 too much, but that's a clear example of a similar style game.
Well, Diablo 4, like, what happened is that Diablo 4 tremendously damaged the game, and they damaged the brand by releasing it without listening to what the players wanted. Because a lot of the changes now that Diablo 4 has were things that people wanted in the beta. People were talking about, like, for example, like full Paragon respecs or full skill board respecs back then. Everybody was asking for this, and people are saying, like, oh yeah, the way that, like, the codex worked is stupid. But I think that every problem that Diablo 4 had is completely self-inflicted. They actively ignored the community. People were begging. They were saying, please don't do this. Please don't add this into the game. Please don't make us farm renown. And they said, no, you're going to have to do it again. And guess what? Now everybody hates the fucking game. And it's going to... I don't think Diablo 4 will be able to recover until the expansion. In order to recover from, like, all of the negative press and negative attention. Everybody? Collectively, yeah. I think that, like, for example, if you look at, like, the sentiment, general sentiment about the game is very negative.
And competitor that did not have a dedicated vision or game director. Instead, the game appears to be designed by committee, or in a far sharper frame of speech, a game designed to appeal to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, so that these people buy the game, and thus Blizzard Entertainment, and now Microsoft, make as much money as possible. Even though Path of Exile 2's game director, development studio, and investors obviously care greatly about how much profit the game makes, they are not allowing that to dictate how fast it is designed and how decisions are made within the game itself.
That's really the problem that a lot of games have nowadays, is that they're always making decisions without the context of what the people that are actually making the game think about the game. Because I bet there are probably some guys that work on the Diablo 4 team, and probably some guys that are at the top of working at the Diablo 4 team, who actually, if you talk to them, they really know their shit. They know what they're talking about. They're not stupid. But the problem is that sometimes, like, decisions get made that, you know, like, that's it. Like, oh yeah, we're going to release it at this time. That's all there is to it. Yeah. And they're not the only ones making the decisions.
And it's honestly one of the largest reasons I'm ridiculously excited for Path of Exile 2. There's been tremendous work done on Path of Exile 2 already, and I'm confident we'll all get our hands on it this year. You'll definitely want to watch this video right now to get the full cinematic rundown on the game's journey from its inception in 2017 to where we are in the present 2024.
Yeah, I think
Dogger just humiliated himself by...
We saw this one already.
Path of Exile...
I completely agree with him. I think that PoE 1, like PoE 2 doesn't need to do what PoE 1 does, because PoE 1 is already doing that. And if you look at the quality of, for example, the Sanctum, you look at the quality of like the, there's like necro areas, I don't remember like what they are. There's the video right there. I really like his videos, Talking of Trees videos, and I'm going to be real, like, it would be great to see more people talking about these other ARPGs and how they're evolving, right? And I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses. Thanks for watching. Yeah, thanks for making a video, man. Oh, he's in chat. There he is. And yeah, make sure to give it a like. I mean, as I said, like, he's probably one of the only people that's like making a lot of like PoE, like meta level videos. And so I really appreciate those. One thing I would add is almost invisible projectiles that one-shot you should be super visible or something. Well, I think that this is the best way to look at it, is that most of the things that people die to in PoE are things that happen within less than half of a second. Like, there's very rarely people that just make a mistake to something, unless like they're really tired and they go into a reflect map, they hit one mob and they're insta-dead. And like, also, how many times have like people gone and done like death recaps or like death analysis, and they're watching the video at 0.25% speed to try to find the frame that they can explain why the death happened in? That's awful. It's stupid, especially when, and like in PoE it wouldn't matter as much, but the reason why it does matter is because in Path of Exile, what ends up happening is you lose experience when you die. So not only is the game illegible, but it punishes you for the fact that it's illegible. And I understand that obviously a very good player can overcome a lot of those issues, but an average player will get demoralized, and I don't see this being a good relationship that a person has to have with the game. You also you have no ideas on what defenses you need to improve. Yeah, exactly. It's very hard to say. Pretty sucks losing 40% experience in the late 90s. Yeah, well, I think you lose 10% to death. That's my understanding about it. It's average might quit. Yeah, exactly. Of course. Yeah, well, it'll happen to them once or twice. And then also, like, for example, this is another issue that I think that PoE needs to fix for PoE 2, is, so you have, like, this is like an average elite, and this is how big an elite can be in terms of power level. This is too big of a gap. Like, you can go from fighting an elite that will just die in 1 second that you never even see him, and then the next elite will do literally more damage than a pinnacle boss. And the difference is random. It comes out of nowhere. And the way that you play the game trains you to just ignore these things, because you have, and I'm going to explain why does this happen. Well, I'm going to tell you how it happens. Just a second. 50% times 30% plus 10% added onto 150 base plus 10% nature damage plus let's see, auto crits plus 10%, 100% damage on crits plus crits ignore armor plus 50% plus map modifiers. That's an issue. And that issue was not as bad in, more like 400%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there you go, 400%. On crits, this is a problem. I think it's bad because it's random and it's not proportional. Like if you fight something like this and it drops 50 divine orbs, then it makes sense. But whenever you're fighting something and this just randomly spawns, you kill it and it drops a yellow item, nobody cares, right? Mobs are infinitely scaling. Yeah, so there's too many multipliers that can happen. And this is another big issue that I think PoE has had for a while. A Scouring Orb? Yeah, exactly. 35% Fizz, extra is Chaos? Yeah, exactly. And you can just keep adding more of this together. But this is another issue I hope PoE will solve. And also, PoE was not like this whenever it first came out. The reason why it's like this now is very simple. It's because it's been out for 10 years, and you have 10 years of modifiers that can stack on top of each other. It's actually really pretty simple how it happens.